All right, good morning, Suzuki Science, grade 11s. Here we go. So this week we are doing biodiversity. We're back at it. So we did last week phylogeny, and you were working on your phylogeny phylogenetic tree, and I'll take a look at that and give you some feedback. This week we are focusing on the biodiversity of 3 kingdoms. We've done bacteria already. We talked about viruses, which are not living. And we talked, and you talked to me in a case study about the microbiome. Fungi can also fall in that microbiome realm, but we don't normally, with a lot of the macroscopic fungi we look at, we don't normally put it in there for what we will be looking at. So this particular week has a lot of information. So it's really leveled. And I would like to show you the worksheet that you'll be working with. So if I take a look at this, make it a little bit larger so you guys can actually see. So there's a lot of information in here. And once again, I've leveled it out so that it's green, yellow, and purple. Green being the minimum, the bare minimum. And it should be around 3 hours. But once again, if you complete just the bare minimum, there will be gaps in your learning. Then there is the yellow. That is a complete experience. When I say complete, it's the complete pandemic experience, a complete pandemic experience, meaning that there's still going to be gaps. It can't be helped. In this unit, we were supposed to be doing for every single organism, every single phylum in the animal kingdom, and many of the kingdoms we're talking about, I was going to give you examples that you would play with. You would work with the bacteria in more detail. You would grow fungi, which you guys are doing at home, hopefully. You would be looking at a whole bunch of different protists and watch them eat each other in that wild world of, little drops of water. And then with the animal kingdom, we would have the animals at the back of the class that you would have interacted with, along with some other animals I would have brought in. So unfortunately, we don't have that experience any longer. So we're going with the yellow complete experience. And of course, purple is for those of you who have time on your hands, you finished your math and your English and whatever other subjects you have, and you're really just, you're looking for something to do and you want to know more, then that's when you move on to the purple. In some cases, the purple I would encourage you to do, and I will suggest them, but they're not really part of the complete experience. It elaborates on what we're doing. For this video here, because there's so much information, I'm just going to show you who I am for the first little while, and after that I'm just going to go to a screenshot without my picture in it. So I just want to go over kind of the layout of the week, and then I'm going to go into the lesson. So this is a large lesson. I'm compressing it into 3 hours as best I can for the minimal experience, but if you go to the yellow, you'll be doing a little bit more in terms of just the coverage. Normally much of this would cover over about 2.5 weeks or so. 3 weeks. It'd be a lot of independent learning regardless, because we'd be focusing on using the design and arthropod to drive your learning, along with the diversity map to drive your learning. In both cases, we're not doing either, so this is really reducing the workload, and I think reducing a lot of the fun, because there's a lot of fun in the creativity of science and being able to create something and demonstrate your understanding through your creativity. So this week we're doing another flip grid. Some of you will be happy to know I'm not actually asking to see you, even though I like seeing you, so if you want to put yourself in a video, great. But in this case, you are doing picking an organism. Your organism must represent some kind of biodiversity example from one of the 3 kingdoms that you're learning about this week. So it must be a fungus, it must be a protist, or it must be an animal. Most people, I assume, are going to pick animals because that's what you're most familiar with, but you don't have to. And in that end of the week flip grid product, you must, at the minimum, tell us its taxonomy. And why did you choose it? Why is it so interesting? There must be some reason. You'll see this link to the flip grid, and you'll see my example on there. In that example, I've explained to you how to use Wolfram Alpha in order to capture the taxonomy, so it makes it much easier. If you're looking at the complete experience, you can tell us its impact on biodiversity, as well as the impact of your organism on the biodiversity around it, as well as the human impact on your organism's biodiversity. So they're 2 different things. And then finally, I'd hope that all of you would do this, because if you guys take the time to do this, it's really nice to get some feedback or to interact. But this does require a little bit more thinking, and it will take a little bit more time. So the third piece, the purple, really this is what I'm strongly encouraging you to do, because it is the end of the week product. I want you to look at 2 other people and look at their organisms. So if I had a frog, which I have, and someone else has a bird that eats frogs, then you might talk about the predator-prey relationship. If I have a frog, which I have, and someone else has a fungus, then that fungus might parasitize and cause my frog population to be decimated. So I want you to talk about how your organisms is affected by the other organisms, somehow connecting the biodiversity. And as you go through this lesson, you'll have more examples. Okay, so that's the end of the week product that I'm looking for. As you go through here, you'll see that I have fungi to start off with. That's where I'm starting the lesson, with some green fungus questions and, yellows. You'll notice that there is a number of things. A fungus among us take-home lab, which I had suggested you start earlier just so you have time for your fungus to grow. A lot of times fungus grows when you don't want it to. When you do want it to, nothing happens. In the protist, that's what we're doing next, the next kingdom. You'll notice there's a lot of links for you to look at. You don't need to look at all of them, but most of the ones I've chosen are there for a reason. They're interesting. So you pick and choose. If you're doing the minimum, you're probably going to pick one. If you're doing the complete, you'll probably look at, half of them or something. If you're doing the purple, you're going to watch everything and have popcorn and be all completely fascinated by this biodiversity stuff. As you keep on going through protist, you'll notice I have some green protist questions. And you'll see that I've mentioned this thing here. Work on the diversity of life full map. You'll see I also have it here on the fungus. Work on the diversity of life full map. So I'm going to show you what that looks like in just a moment. So that is something that is yellow. It's a complete experience. And you'll see a Mindomo map shared with you. So it's a mind map or concept map that's shared with you, and that's where you can complete it. And each of you have your own. You're allowed to work in partners with any of this stuff. I'm perfectly fine with you collaborating with people. Even a group of 3, perfectly fine. Right? Complete the human impacts on biodiversity sheet. Protist entry, you'll see a fungus entry is earlier and an animal entry is later. And in purple, complete the climate change impact sheet. This purple and this green, these two are very similar. Climate change is an aspect of human impacts, so you could choose to do this one, but it's really at the next level. This Protist Virtual Lab, once again, only have lots of time. This requires a particular app, Macromedia Flash or something like that. It might not run on your computer, so take it or leave it. And then you come down to the animal kingdom. So the animal kingdom, asking for the definition of life. There's some tables to fill in. You see these numbers here? That's the number of classes. Porifera, I want 1 class. Cnidaria, I want 4 classes. Platyhelminthes, I want 3 classes. Can you say that word? Platyhelminthes? Platyhelminthes. And so on and so on and so on. And a specific example. That's in green. Evolutionary milestone, and it's in green. Right? Yellow, purple, I mean, you guys can read colors. Read colors, does that make sense? Work on the diversity of life full map. There it is again, so I have to explain that. And the green and the purple. Review your notes from the beginning of the year, because we started the course in biodiversity, and that's when I had you guys all assigned to trees. You might remember that. Some of you were tamarack, spruce, fir, Dawn sequoia, and we had a beetle attacking you, and we talked about biodiversity. So now that we're back in the biodiversity unit, we want to make that connection. So you do want to review those notes. And once you review those notes, you can, for the yellow, look at this oil palm exploration activity. And this oil palm exploration activity, it's a case study. And you're going to read through this case, and as you read through it, it actually has at least one, sometimes several, human impacts for each of the 5 categories. So for pollution, invasive species, habitat destruction, overexploitation, and climate change, you'll find at least one example in that reading. So when you go to the previous explanation of what you're supposed to do here, and it says, complete the human impacts on biodiversity sheet, animals entry, or fungus entry, or protist entry. Well, down here, this is the sheet. Human impacts. So green, this is the minimum expected to complete. So what is the habitat loss, the pollution, overexploitation? Examples from the lesson, which I haven't got to yet. That's going to be the next thing. Example for the reading, that's the oil palm case study. That goes in here. And then for those of you looking at the purple, the exemplary, the one I just want to, I don't want to sleep because I want to do so much biology, then you could give me an Ontario example, a local example of any one of these, of which there are many. Okay, you probably did this in the elementary school, as a matter of fact. Biological hotspot, if you did the design and arthropod activity, each of you have been picking a biological hotspot and you have been exploring it and explaining it to the class. So we're not doing that anymore, but at the minimum, you should know what a biological hotspot is, so you can click on that link. International Day of Biological Diversity, makes sense to know what that is, but it's purple because, it's not that relevant to our learning. And then what I'm going to do in this lesson is there's a couple of stories. You know I like to talk. So there's a couple of little anecdotes I want to share from different parts of the animal kingdom. One is the arthropods, which is the largest phylum. 1 out of every 4 animals, supposedly, something like that, is a beetle. And a beetle is only, it's not a kingdom. It's within the animal kingdom. It's not a phylum. It's within the arthropod phylum. It's not even a subphylum. It's not even a class. It's the next group down. Do you know what that is? So it tells you something about that particular phylum of arthropods. It's huge. It's massive. So I'm going to do a little bit of a lesson related to arthropods, and then I'm going to do another side lesson on parasites, which is completely fascinating. Notice I put them in purple. So I'm going to take the time, I'm going to record them, I'm going to talk about them, I'm going to have all these facial expressions of how cool I think it is, and then you can listen, and I'm just asking for your reaction. It'll just give you a deeper understanding of the biodiversity of life and give you some ideas of other things you might want to read about. This is the climate change impact sheet, which is, as I said, redundant with the human impact, but it's focusing on every single kingdom and several examples from the animal kingdom. Specifically, how does climate change affect that kingdom? That's something that's an expectation that you should know walking out of this course. Now, this thing here at the bottom, shape of life video questions. This is one of the units. If we were in class, we would have just finished the genetics. We had the phylogeny activity. It would have been full scale. You would have had a really big test. You would have had another lab, and it would you'd just been overwhelmed, and it would have just been a blur. And now we get into this diversity unit, which we kind of get this chance to step back. Everything would have been interactive and hands-on and minimal teaching in the classes, and it would have been spread out over 2.5 weeks. And actually 3.5 weeks, because that includes plants. So for about a month, we would have just done this, and there would not have been any, I don't even do quizzes normally. And at the end of that, you would have presented this big, massive presentation that would have come back in a summative task, which we're not doing. We're not even doing a summative task this time around. So one of the ways that you can get the learning was I would show little clips. You know I don't really show a lot of clips in class. Maybe you don't, because you only had me for a month. I don't normally show videos in class. But here in the diversity unit, I do, because that's the best way to see organisms in the true. If you can't go outside and watch them, which you can, but out here, what can you see in Ontario, especially in the winter? Not that much. So the videos are a great tool and a resource. Shape of life. So there's been a whole bunch, planet Earth, and I can't name them all. I'm at a loss for words right now, but it seems like every couple of years there's a new amazing video on animals. So Shape of Life is older. I think it's like 15 years old now, but it's excellent. I think it's one of the best put together educational animal videos out there. It does a really good job of talking about evolutionary history, diversity, and human impacts, and all that kind of stuff. So the website at PBS, they have a whole bunch of links. So they've taken clips of these videos. So there's like 10 videos, one for every single file that we're going to focus on. But they've just taken little clips. And so here are the links. Here's the download link. If you click on that, it goes to the main website. Let me click on it now so I can at least show you. And it will open up on some screen somewhere. Okay, here we go. So here's the shape of life. Right? So annelids, chordates, cnidarians, echinoderms, flatworms, that's platyhelminthes, and so on. So all these videos. Okay? And so these are specific videos to the sponges, and these are questions. Specific videos for cnidarians, and then questions. Nematodes, no questions. Platyhelminthes, and questions. And this goes all the way through the important phyla of the animal kingdom. That's a lot of questions. So if you look at my instructions, you'll notice I said very explicitly, and let me make it big here, look nice big. This is meant to be a collaborative document. So I've given you this link to a collaborative document that the entire class can access. I do not want even the most die-hard bio fan out there to sit down and do every single question. That is a waste of your time, I think. I would like you to choose some questions, talk to some partners. Actually, the whole class should be working on this, but you'll notice I did put it as purple. Somewhere I put it as purple, and okay, well, it's purple. Let's make it purple so you can see there. And if you do choose to do questions, if the entire class were to do it and you guys did 2 or 3 questions each, then that'd be easy because there's 60 questions. But I know not the entire class is going to do it. So several students will work on it, and if it's only 6 of you, you don't need to finish it between the 6 of you. Just watch some of the videos. Really interesting watching these animals do some really odd things you'd never expect them to do. And then these questions, they help solidify the concepts that I consider important. Right? You're not being tested on this. in this unit, we are doing diversity this week, we did phylogeny last week, next week we're doing plants. We're going to ask you to actually take some seeds and put them in the soil and watch them grow over the next 2 weeks. That's going to be part of our plants. The same way you're going to watch the fungus grow over this week. So those instructions will come a little bit later. And then in 2 weeks' time, you're going to be doing a biodiversity. We're not going to give a formal lesson. It'll be just an activity. We're going to ask you to go outside, you know, hopefully more than your backyard, but at least your backyard, and you're going to have to observe and look for specific examples that meet the criteria that fit in certain kingdoms or certain phylas or certain orders. And that's going to be like a mini lab notebook. It's not anything like a lab notebook. I hesitate to use that terminology because you guys have seen the lab notebooks from last year. It's nothing like that. But you're going to go outside in 2 weeks and you're going to collect some information and you're going to take some notes and do something fun. And we're going to kind of geo market, and we're going to put it all on like a Seek app or iNaturalist app and share our biodiversity between the two classes with each other. So that'll be pretty cool. So that gives you an idea of what we're doing this week. So at this point, you can watch the video lesson. You can also open up the PowerPoint. I'd like to show you the PowerPoint actually, just so I can keep on going over the overview of this. So let me just minimize this. Okay, so here's the PowerPoint. So the PowerPoint is quite large. There's a lot of stuff in here. I don't want to be intimidated by everything you see in here. Look at all these slides. So I was playing with color coding the slides so that green was like the minimum and yellow was like the complete, and I still might do that. We'll see. You'll notice everything else here is white. Now, a lot of these slides are information. I'm not teaching it. It's just you going through it. And even though it's a lot of slides, there's a lot of pictures. And so the things that are important, I'll somehow designate it as this is important. But this is the workbook, we'll call it, that will allow you to answer the questions on the worksheet. Okay? So that's what you're working through. So there's a lot of information on here, but much of it is just you're just reading through it, getting some interest, and you'll notice a lot of things on the worksheet doesn't refer to anything on the PowerPoint, so it's purely interest. The other thing is I'm going to be teaching with a different document, and in that document I'll have a lot of pictures, and I might put up a PDF version of it. I don't know. If you guys ask me, I will, but I don't know. I don't want to overwhelm you with too much information. And the last piece is, you'll notice on the instructions, I kept on referring to this thing here. I kept on saying complete, where is it? Is there complete work on the diversity of life in full map by completing the missing entries. So this was fungus, there's one for protists, there's one for animals. So what is that map? So this is the map. So in the past, what would happen is the students would be responsible for creating this map from scratch. But that's way too much work. I'm not there to support you with the learning, support you with the technology. So I've actually created the map for you, parts of the map. So this is a diversity map. So let's just zoom in here so you can see what's going on. This is the full map of diversity of life. It starts from bacteria and archaeobacteria way back at the beginning, goes into protists, fungi, and animals, and eventually plants as well. So I've zoomed in a little bit. You'll see this one lone green algae sitting here for some reason. We'll get back to that. But as I scroll over here, it's a long scroll, get over here, there's the bacteria. Notice the bacteria has already been filled in. And you'll see the morphologies that you were supposed to fill in from the beginning. So you need to fill those in. Coccus, Bacillus, and Spirillum. They go in here somewhere. And then here on the side, see this little tab? That is a note tab. You can add extra notes on there. So anytime you see this little note on the side, it tells you there's something associated with it. So bacteria, and this color here represents the domain. This eubacteria represents the kingdom. So there are 3 domains and there are several kingdoms. So the archaea has the archaeobacteria and certain important information. Sometimes the information is blank and I ask you to fill it in. You'll notice that this is complete except for the morphologies. You have to put the right morphology in the right square. The archaeobacteria, there's nothing to do. Then with the fungi, notice it says phyla A, phyla B, C, D, and chytrids. So A, B, C, and D are listed in the lesson, and you have to go through the lesson, pick out those points, and put them in the particular box. And once again, you have to put them in the right box. You can't just put zygomycetes anywhere, because one of these is a zygomycetes, one is a basidiomycetes, and all these complicated words, you'll figure it out eventually. Protists, once again, I'll just stop here under animal-like, plant-like, and fungus-like. So as I go through the lesson, if you don't understand how everything comes together, you can come back to this map and I'll give you a big overview. And so this blue here is representing a category. It's not a taxa, it's a category. And then within that, you'll see a bunch of different groups. And so you have to put the right one. Amoeba belongs to a particular animal-like protist group. Paramecium belongs to a particular animal-like protist group. And in the note, you'll be able to figure it out if you follow through the note. Plant-like, there's a bunch. Notice that some of them I say replace me. So in order to replace a graphic, it's really, really easy. What you do is if you go on to a browser window here, and let's say I'm looking for a plant-like protist. Let's say I'm looking for Euglena. So Euglena is already there, but let's say I'm looking for Euglena. So I just type in Euglena, and I give me a video. I don't want a video. Okay, and then I'm going to go to images. So I'm going to find one that looks appropriate. So I'll grab this one here. I'm going to right-click. I'm going to select copy address, copy image address, and I come to the image here. I click on it, and I go to the image box on the left, and then I highlight by highlighting it all, and then I paste. Hit enter, and now I've replaced the image with the one I found on the internet. So I go to that box, I'm going to copy that address, and click on this box, I'm going to highlight everything and paste again, just so I can get back to the replace me. So here, copy, paste, there we go. All right. So those are your plant-like, your fungus-like, and then we're going to get into the plants, which is not until next week, and there's a lot of them. And then over here at the animals, which is really, there's a lot of animal things happening here. So for animals, we're looking at the phylum of animal, we're looking at the kingdom of animal, the phyla that are found in the animal kingdom, several classes found in particular phyla. So the cnidarians, I want you to do 1, 2, 3, 4. For the porifera, I want you to do, actually, notice there's no blue, so I don't want you to do any phyla, just an example. For the platyhelminthes, I want you to do 3 classes, 1, 2, 3. For the nematodes, I just want 1 class, and then the purple here represents an example. In many cases, I've given you pictures already. So that means for annelids, when you give me 3 classes, the classes should match that picture. You should picture that and see that this is an earthworm, and that this is a leech, and that this is a polychaete, right? So that will help you. The mollusks, also 3. In some cases, if you lose the research, on my PowerPoint, I give you the right number, but often it's more than 3 classes of mollusks, but I just give you 3 classes because I don't need to give you 10, right? You see a squid, you see a snail, you recognize these, and so you keep on going through. Sometimes I ask you, look at that, there's that murder wasp, put that in there. I ask you to give me a bit more information by looking for pictures. For the echinoderms, everything's already filled out for you. You don't have to do anything. And that's why here I said, give me the common name of echinoderm animals. So this is a sea star, and this is a sea cucumber. So give me the common name. And then we get over here into the chordates, which is going to be all really complicated. The chordates are so big that they have extra categories. You'll see the blue representing the class, but you'll actually see green up here before and yellow. So 2 new groups. And then we finally get to the classes, and in some cases we get to another interesting new group here, a subclass, before we get to the examples. So this is the diversity map. So most of it's completed for you. Now it's up to you to work through it. Okay? So that pretty much summarizes everything you're doing this week. I'm going to give you a video lesson on the animal kingdom, the fungus kingdom, the protist kingdom. I'll probably put it together. I might split it into 2. And then I will give you the rest of the week to work on this stuff. All right? I'll give you those 2 extra lessons, probably Tuesday and Wednesday, the video lessons, the interesting stuff, and then you can react to it or not, and hopefully you have a good time this week. All right.